Live stream audio check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock and the inquiry is now open. Can everyone hear? My name is Benjamin Webb. I've been appointed by the Secretary of State to hold this inquiry into an appeal made by Charles Church, Severn Valley, under Section 78 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 against the decision of North Somerset Council to refuse outline planning permission for a residential development of up to 125 dwellings, that's C3, with access off Dark Lane, 23 Dark Lane and adjoining Backwell, Somerset, BS48 3NT. Just before we begin, there are a few formalities to run through. Firstly, can I just request that everyone make sure they've silenced their electronic devices? And can I ask the council just to explain the emergency evacuation procedure?
Good morning, sir. Yes, welcome everybody. If I start with, there's facilities out in the lobby where everyone's just come through. There's toilets out there and water vending facilities should anybody need them. In terms of the fire alarm, there's no drill plan, so if that should sound, the fire exits, I point over there to the kind of right-hand side of the room. There's one over at this side, and then again, the main doors that you've come in. Whichever exit you take, then follow the building in a clockwise direction, and we congregate in the small car park over at the corner of the building.
Okay, we're using microphones today, so if and when you want to contribute, you need to press the speak button, and then when you've finished contributing, if you could switch it off. Right, there's another inspector from the Planning Inspectorate in the room today. He's here just to observe the hearing. It would take no part in today's proceedings or in the decision. That will be mine alone. We are colleagues though, so you might see us talking during the breaks, but that's not about the merits of the case. And next, could I just take the names of those speaking, starting with the appellant, if you could just introduce your team or those members that are present today.
Yes, good morning, sir. My name is Young, Christopher Young, spelt Y-O-U-N-G, and I've got a list of appearances typed out with qualifications, their position within the firm, and their area of expertise. May I just distribute that? I'll just run through that if I may. And I'll get the people to indicate who they are by just raising their arm when we go round. So Mr. Rory McHugh, who deals with highways, Mr. Tom Clarkson, who deals with ecology, Mr. Gary Holliday, who deals with landscape and visual impact, Mr. Rob Skinner, who deals with heritage, Mr. Gareth Howell, who deals with design, and Catherine Ventham, who deals with planning. And I'm instructed by Mrs. Ventham, who sits immediately to my left. We've also got a solicitor, Mr. Christopher Charlton, from Clark Wilmot, and he'll be attending for a discussion on the Section 106. That's our team, sir. They've also got members of the client firm, Persimmon, here.
Okay, thank you. And now can I just ask the representative for the council to introduce himself?
Thank you, sir. I'm Peter Wadsley. I'm counsel. I'm instructed by the solicitor to North Somerset Council to represent the council in this appeal. The council does not call evidence on the substantive matters, but of course will engage in the conditions and Section 106 session.
Right, I have a list of people who I know would like to speak or will be making a contribution read out by someone else. Is there anyone else who isn't on that list who is wanting to speak? Okay, when we come to the time, I'll take contributions from that list then, in the order. Do we also have some contributors joining us virtually today?
Yes, sir. We have one resident who is named on the list, number 13, that's Caridwin Roberts, and Porek McKeown.
Okay, thank you. My understanding is that everyone on that list objects to this scheme. I should just make you aware, and I'll ask you again when we come to the time, whether you're happy to answer questions on your evidence. Now, just to be aware, if you do speak, or if you ask questions later on in the inquiry, your name will be listed in the decision. And please be aware that in making your contributions, I don't need to hear the same contribution twice. So if you could avoid repetition, that would be very helpful. Now, in terms of the where the witnesses will sit, those for the appellant will sit in the chairs just to my right, and I'll take contributions from interested parties from your chairs if you just use the microphones. Now, I think the event is being live streamed. Could I just clarify with the council whether that live streaming is running continuously or whether you have you're breaking it up in some way?
I'll be pointed out if I'm wrong, but I believe it's been set into 4 sessions. So there's 4 YouTube links on the website, one for this morning. Then when we break for lunch, sir, there'll be a separate session this afternoon, and the same order tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to clarify, we are committed to that time, that lunch break
No,
slot.
it will be flexible. So again, my colleagues in the room, the start time is we start the session when we start. Oh.
We start when we start. I'll follow you. So if you call an early start or a late start, I'll just alter the streaming time.
Okay, the reason I ask is if you see the timetable, inquiry is expected to last for 2 days. Each day is split into a number of sessions with breaks. But the timings given on that timetable are only provisional. So it may be that certain sessions move a bit quicker, some might move a bit slower. But we'll certainly finish by 5 o'clock today. Now, I'll keep those timings under review as we move along, and if at any point the advocates think that an adjournment or break's necessary, please let me know. Can I just check as well whether we have this room tomorrow? And is it safe to leave items in this room? Now, I've got copies of the council's letters of notification of the appeal, 25th of November 2024, of the inquiry dated the 17th of February, and the second letter 25th of February. We've also got the lists of the people to whom those letters were sent. Also aware that the site notice has been posted. I also have copies of the representations made in response to the appeal notification, the original planning application, and also the consultation that's been recently held in relation to the amended traffic calming scheme. I'll take those into account in reaching my decision, so there was no need to read out any of those representations today. Now, I held a case management conference online on the 10th of January 2025. That was with representatives of the appellant and the council. And that was held to discuss the procedure. Merits of the appeal were not discussed at that meeting. So that covered the confirmation of the main issues, the plans, the way in which the evidence would be dealt with, timetable for submission of evidence and the agenda. Now, insofar as proofs of evidence have been submitted by the appellant, I've read those and I'd expect them to be largely taken as read. Can I just check, have hard copies been provided here for interested parties?
Yes, sir, we do have hard copies of them here.
And I assume the main parties will be familiar with the procedure, but for those that don't know the procedure, I'll outline it below. So, when I've concluded these opening remarks, I'll invite the appellant, then the counsel to each make a brief opening statement. That'll be around 10 to 15 minutes long. So that'll help everyone to understand the positions of the main parties and their arguments insofar as that's relevant. Then I'll hear some contributions from interested parties. As noted, we'll work from that list. As I said before, those who give evidence will generally be expected to answer questions from the appellant's advocate. I might also have questions. Now, as was agreed during the case management conference, inquiry has been structured by topic. So each topic will be dealt with through formal presentation of evidence by the appellant, but there won't be any cross-examination because the counsel is not contesting the appeal. I'll then follow an opportunity to ask questions. I might also have questions. So when all the main issues have been dealt with, so that'll be at some point tomorrow, we'll have a discussion on conditions and planning obligations. Now that's a standard procedure. It doesn't mean that I've made up my mind on the case. And we will discuss at that time whether any time will be allowed for a signed copy to be provided. Then following that discussion, I'll hear closing submissions from the counsel and then from the appellant. So not in the order shown on the timetable. It would be helpful for me to have those in writing beforehand. Now, I'm not inviting any applications for costs, but if anyone does intend to make an application for an award of costs, that should be done here before I either adjourn or close the inquiry tomorrow. I also have the power to initiate award of costs, whether or not any applications have been made by the parties. Now, if I was to do that, that would follow a written process with the relevant party after the appeal decision is issued. Now, I have already visited the area. I haven't been inside the site, but I viewed it from outside. So I'm familiar with it and its surroundings. As was also suggested, I was able to observe use of dark lane by children from the primary and secondary schools. I will, however, be making another visit after the end of the event. Now, I've seen the itinerary agreed between the parties. I know that that doesn't actually include the site itself. Is there any reason why I can't simply access it during my visit?
No, you can access it.
And I think it's agreed that that can be an unaccompanied visit. And just to make clear, the site visit is for me to review the site and its surroundings solely. Though should I be approached during the visit, I won't be able to enter into any kind of discussion. Now, hopefully you'll all have seen the draft timetable. At this point, are there any comments on the running order? As I said, it's only a guide. We'll look at timings as we go along. And whilst I've indicated time for questions, that's an estimate. I may or may not ask questions. I might have more questions in relation to certain matters. Again, it doesn't mean I've made up my mind. Simply to help me ensure that I understand the evidence. Now, in terms of the plans, can I just check that those remain as they were identified in the draft conditions?
So there'll just be one extra one, which is that we just need to add the traffic calming plan into the list as well, which is plan reference 14.
Now, in terms of documents we might receive on today, would the appellant be happy to compile a list?
Yes.
No documents and evidence should have been provided already. I note that the traffic calming plan is the one that's been consulted on. If you intend to submit any evidence, could you please tell me now? Now, I am aware that an interested party wants to show a video. I haven't seen the video. Can I just check with the interested party what that video is of?
There are two videos. The first one is 34 seconds long and shows the access to the site at 23 Dart Lane. The second one is 4 seconds long and shows children at school time going past that. I have them available. I'm happy to send out to the parties on a zip file this morning. They're already with North Somerset, so they're all set up and ready to be played.
Okay, the appellant have any concerns about that? Now, only exceptionally will I take material received after the inquiry into account. So moving on to the main issues. As set out, they are whether the site's an appropriate location for the proposed development, having particular regard to its effects in relation to highways, including equalities implications, character and appearance, including heritage, ecology, including protecting species and habitat sites, and housing supply. Does anyone have any comments? Now, just before we begin, just a reminder to keep comments as concise as possible, courteous and on topic. I understand that we're dealing with some emotive issues, but please don't interrupt or heckle or make any other form of disruptive noise. Everyone will have their opportunity to make a contribution. So that concludes my opening remarks. At this point, are there any questions about the procedure or other matters?
So I just wondered, I do have hard copies of statements by residents and the parish council representatives this morning. When would that be convenient to distribute?
It would be helpful if you could do that at this point. However, what I just want to confirm is that you will be reading from these scripts.
Yes, we'll be reading from the script. You might find slightly praised versions, which I'm sure you would appreciate.
Okay, if you could hand those things around.
Excuse me, sir. There is one missing from Councillor Bridget Pretty. She will make sure that you get that after she's spoken. Thank you.
Right, can I now ask the Mr. Young to make a short opening statement?
So yes, this will be very short. The reason for that is because I've got my closing submissions already written, and for various reasons I don't imagine it's going to change much during the inquiry because we're not contesting evidence with the council, and I run the risk of giving you the same closing submissions as the opening. So I haven't produced a written closing. I've just got 4 points to make, if I may, and they're just a couple of sentences each, if you'll indulge me. Point 1, Council has a severe and acute shortfall in its 5-year land supply. On our figures, there's a 2.33 year supply. That is a shortfall of nearly 4,500 homes today. 4,473. Council's figure is 3.07 years, which is still a shortfall of 3,223. Second point, plan making in this area has collapsed. We've had several attempts at a West of England and a combined authority plan, and it's all failed. Thirdly, in 2018, there was an appeal decision in which the inspector recommended to the Secretary of State dismissing the appeal, but with a very clear indication of why that proposal was unacceptable in light of the neighbourhood plan and the local green space designation. This proposal, along with the other recent appeal, is entirely consistent with the inspector's reasoning in that case, which in essence was do not cross the village, the local green space with roads or other infrastructure. And that is now what has happened. This is the final chapter in this story. And the final point is just about the traffic calming. There's been a significant response. I think we can be confident the consultation has been effective. There's a lot of rejections of this consultation proposal, the amended scheme. However, we are not going to throw our toys out the cot and say, well, if you've got that much objection, let's go back to how it was, for 2 reasons. 1, the local highway authority support the amended proposals, and 2, the local planning authority support the amended proposals. So, no toys out of cot. We're just doing what everybody recognises is the better scheme. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can I now ask Mr. Wadsley?
So this is an appeal against non-determination. After the application was lodged, the council, as is normal, engaged in discussions with the appellant about the application on a variety of issues, including of particular interest to local people, the issue of access and highway safety. That issue has indeed caused local people to make many detailed representations to the council and in this appeal. Before those discussions were finally concluded, the appellants appealed, as is their right, against non-determination. The Council's statement of case explained that had it been able to determine the application, it would have approved the application subject to appropriate legally binding conditions and a Section 106 obligation. The statement of case annexed the report to committee where issues between the appellants and the Council were set out. It dealt with the recent and extensive planning history and, of course, local and national policies. The committee was advised, amongst other things, that the Council had a less than 5-year housing land supply, and as my learned friend has said, it's 3.7, 3.8 years as far as the Council is concerned, that there were no national planning policy framework policies which would provide a clear reason for refusing the development, and that therefore the so-called tilted balance would have to be applied. The report considered a wide range of matters, including conflict with the adopted settlement policy, the impact on the Grade 1 listed church of St Andrews, impact on the landscape, and on the loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. The report further considered the issue of transport and impact on the highway network, access to the site, ecology, flooding and drainage, design and residential amenity. It considered the advantages of the development and accepted, as is obvious, the contribution that market and affordable housing would bring to the district and the 5-year housing land supply. The report therefore invited members to resolve to approve the application, had they been in a position to do so, subject to conditions and a Section 106 obligation. In the light of the public interest that there undoubtedly is in this application and in the appeal, the Council's position has to be guided by national and local planning policy, particularly the former. In present circumstances, and particularly given the national planning policy position, no council has a free hand in determining planning applications, even under policies in its existing local plan. While that normally has, that's the local plan, while that normally has primacy, it may have to give way to national policy, particularly when there is no 5-year housing land supply, as here. In that situation, the result is that local policies, for example on development outside settlement boundaries, may well be, in effect, subordinate to national planning policies supporting the provision of housing. Any council has to strike a balance guided by the terms of national policy, and that balance, the council has concluded, must be struck in favour of the development, subject, as I've said, to the appropriate conditions and legal agreements. As to the mechanics of this appeal, the council does not call any substantive evidence, but will deal with conditions and legal agreements and whether they are appropriate and have the necessary safeguards. To that end, a statement of common ground has been prepared and agreed between the council and the appellant. From this, it will be seen that matters which were outstanding and had not been discussed before the appeal was lodged have now been agreed, and the council expects the inquiry to have the benefit of a largely agreed list of conditions and a Section 106 obligation. On conditions, the position is not completely straightforward. They are largely agreed, subject to your, sir, final word, but one matter is outstanding relating to highways. The conditions provide for calming on Dark Lane. It cannot be assumed that what has been suggested will achieve the desired result, and to that end the Council considers that a further condition is necessary to provide for assessment of the result of traffic calming and, in the light of the results of such assessment, the possible imposition of a further condition to provide for further measures of traffic calming. The Parish Council and others may well have their own views on the position, and that can be dealt with as appropriate in any conditions session of the inquiry. And so, sir, accordingly, and subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions and any Section 106 obligation, the Council does not resist this appeal.
Right, I'll now take contributions from interested parties, working through the list that I've been provided with.
Thank you.
And if I could ask, if you could just give us a moment to find the relevant printed copy once you've introduced yourself. And could you confirm in introducing yourself that you are happy to answer questions from Mr. Young?
Thank you. Hopefully you'll find the statements in order, sir.
Okay, then, so the first on the list is Parish Councillor Barbara Harland.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Harland. I'm a parish councillor speaking on behalf of the Parish Council, also the Residents Association, who have supported the Parish Council's representations through this scheme, and of course the residents of Backwell, some of whom are with us today. Our original application, you've mentioned earlier, sir, we responded on the 30th of July 2024. There were subsequent statements on revised highways plans, and we are happy that those are being taken as read. Today I would like to introduce, to my far left, we have Neil Brandt, who's our independent highways consultant, and we have Lucy White to my near left, who's our planning consultant and will be very interested to contribute to 106 conversations. And then to my right, I have District Councillor Bridget Petty, who represents Backwell, and with us today we also have some residents. As previously noted, we've got a couple of short videos we would like to show, and you'll notice in the pack that we have some pictures to try and help those that are less familiar with the site sort of understand the workings of Dark Lane. The Parish Council and Residents Association are concerned that if the appellant scheme is approved, it would result in a serious risk to highway safety. Speakers this morning will give testimony to the vulnerability of Dark Lane, with major safety concerns being expressed. It can be accepted that road safety on Dark Lane is already an issue and therefore not the responsibility of the developer. But our representations this morning will show that this scheme is unworkable and, if approved, would be in its own right unsafe, in addition to the introduction of further traffic and pedestrians, vehicle conflict points, exacerbating an already sensitive situation. We would like to thank Charles Church for writing to the Parish Council, the Residents Association and some of the residents with the proposed traffic calming scheme. It did come as a surprise to us as the Parish Council that the MD of Persimmon Severn Valley, in a letter to a resident, suggested that this mitigation scheme was first mooted by the Parish Council and subsequently supported by the Parish Council. This is not the case. The Parish Council has consistently stated that traffic calming measures submitted by the appellant during the determination of the planning application to reduce the speeds were insufficient to achieve a safe site access. The Parish Council has recognised the attempts made by the appellant to improve the scheme and the traffic calming measures. However, it has no part in drafting this revised scheme, and the Parish Council remains concerned that the proposals raise highway safety and residential amenity issues. For us, these outstanding road safety issues are not a matter of design detail, which can be deferred to a later date, but matters of whether safe access to development for all road users is achievable. So I'm very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Did you have any questions, Mr. Young?
Good morning. So, Councillor, can I just be clear then? The current situation on the road on Dark Lane, is your position that the current road is a serious risk to highway safety?
Thank you for that question. At the moment, where the access point is you're proposing, there are parked cars, because that is a very narrow pavement, and therefore that could provide a risk to children, for example, on the school run. But the parked cars afford protection and have done for a number of years. So you're right, it's a pressure point, it's not ideal, but the removal of those parked cars and the displacement of those parked cars and the traffic, bringing closer to the children, that's what we're very worried about. It's not a normal, modern standard pavement width either, and you've probably visited the site, you're aware the camber on that pavement is very difficult. The good thing about it at the moment is that on the walk to the junior school, it's an uninterrupted site. There's at the top of the lane, there's a little community with about 6 houses in. That's gated. So we don't have traffic coming out unannounced crossing those children. So those are our major concerns.
Okay, let me just try that again. Is it your case that the current situation on Dark Lane gives rise to a serious risk to highway safety?
I'm not an expert, but it is certainly there are risks.
Yeah, because it says it in your... No, you say our proposal. You're not an expert, and I accept that. I respect that. You've got somebody who is. But you say it would result in a serious risk to highway safety. You're saying that, as you've acknowledged, as a non-expert, and that's fine. But secondly, my question is, is the current arrangement on Dark Lane a serious risk to highway safety? Is that a yes?
It is a yes.
It's a yes. So the current arrangement is a serious risk to highway safety. Yes?
It is.
Good. Okay. What is it about the current arrangement that is, in your opinion, a serious risk to highway safety?
Okay, so you have a number of issues. I've already mentioned the parking, which currently would go across the proposed site on the eastern side or the pavement side of Dark Lane that affords some protection. So that's one element. The volume of traffic for the different uses for Dark Lane, which are well documented. We have a disproportionate number of HTVs going up to the North Somerset amenity site, to what was the Coles Quarry and is now being developed into a trading estate. We have HTVs going up into Churchtown to another trading estate. On top of that, you've got a narrow road with two-way traffic, etc. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and that, I mean that generally, genuinely. I've got narrow road, understand that.
Yes.
The disproportionate number of HGVs that are going up to the trading estates, a couple of trading estates, that's very clear. The volume of traffic. The first one, though, when you said parking across, do you mean residents parking on the road, or could you just clarify the first one?
Okay, so parking is used for a number of reasons on Dark Lane. So the school run, it's particularly tight. Yeah. If you do visit there, you'll see that it's not just on Dark Lane; it's the side roads, Summerlands, St Andrews, and also the top of Dark Lane, where you get the access point to Church Lane, and even going up to the start of the quarry. So the parking that we're concerned about at the moment, on the left-hand side by the pavement, that does afford children a barrier between moving traffic.
Okay, so the parking is for various different reasons.
Yes.
The existence of the parked cars provides a physical barrier between the children using the pavement and the vehicles, yes?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So those are the points in relation to that. Now, obviously, the volume of traffic is what it is. We'll increase that slightly, but against the daily flows, we're not the main component of the traffic. The HGVs are entitled to use that road. Council haven't sought to put a restriction on, have they?
No, I won't go into that. There's different planning things, but no, there are not restrictions, but not because that wasn't intended, it'd be fair to say.
Okay, but, I can only deal with the here
and
now,
which
it has not been judged appropriate to put a restriction on. The width of the road is what it is. So just with the parking then, the main change that occurs as a result of our proposal is that we're creating an access and removing some parking, obviously, with the consequence that won't act as a barrier for people using the pavement, and obviously the children have got to cross our access way as well. Is that fair?
Yes, it is fair. Just going back to the restrictions, while there's nothing formal in place, North Somerset Council, with their they're a civic community site. They do not allow their HGVs to move at morning time after 8:30 until 9, and then in the afternoon, I think it's from about, I'd have to look it up, it's about 3:15 until 4 o'clock. And that is certainly helpful. We don't have those similar restrictions on the other two sites, which I think, quite frankly, were an omission. Going back to your question about what the main issues are, yes, you're correct in stating those concerns and summarising them, but for the residents here, you'll hear today, we are concerned about the extra volume of traffic, particularly in those difficult times.
Okay, and I understand that. I'll get my experts to talk about that. I just want to sort of drill down into the detail of the concerns, and hopefully this is a constructive dialogue. What I'm keen to know is about the HGV restriction. The council obviously can control their own drivers.
Yes.
So they've told their drivers, don't use Dart Lane between the times when school children will be there. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's been something you've communicated to the council, spoken
Yes.
to your, obviously spoken to the other councillors, spoken to the highway department, and achieved that outcome, yes?
Yes.
But of course you can't do that with other businesses because they're not in the control of the council, are they?
Correct. Yes.
So it sounds to me like, well, first of all, is there another route that lorries can take to get to the trading estates and the waste site? Is there a different route they could take?
Well, sometimes they do use Church Lane. The Church Lane goes in two parts. So there's an element that goes past the church and goes down to the Bristol direction of the road, and there's one that goes towards Weston. What we call Church Lane East, it's impossible. You can't have two vehicles crossing.
Okay.
Church Lane West is in exactly the same situation as Dark Lane, and pavements are restricted.
So is there no other route to those trading estates, even if it's more circuitous? The only way to get to them is either Dark Lane, Church Lane East, or Church Lane West.
There's also another very tiny road that goes up to the airport, which you'll see on your sat-nav. It goes up through an area called Chescombe Combe and then joins Hyattswood Road. And that is not suitable for HGVs, and on the occasions when one uses it, it causes mayhem.
Okay. Would you say that the amount of residential properties, or the intensity of residential properties, is the same on Church Lane East and West as it is on Dark Lane?
Well, Dark Lane is the main serving point for that side of the village. So it is impacted by 500 homes and therefore associated traffic from that side of the village.
Yeah.
Of course, the other part of our parish is up by the airport, which is downside. So when those residents come to access village amenities or to come to school, they will use that tiny road that I talked about past Chescombe Combe.
Which, in your opinion, is the best route for the HGVs to take? Is it Church Lane East, Church Lane West, obviously not that other lane, or Dark Lane?
Sadly, I have to say it's Dark Lane.
Dark Lane is the best one. Okay, so the idea of putting an HGV restriction on and therefore causing the HGV drivers to go down Church Lane East or West would not be appropriate.
I really appreciate the thoughts. I think the problem is, as you've already said, that putting in restrictions when owners to sites, which includes North Somerset Council, have their own amenities there, and they're entitled to use them. So even if you put a restriction on a road, my understanding is that those HGVs would still be able to use them.
Well, you can make routes HGV free. You can do that. You can also say that vehicles, I've got one right by my house, by Cheltenham Racecourse, busy this week obviously, but the fact is that you can stop cars even going down a particular route if it's a rat run. Those signs exist, and for HGV drivers it's an offence to go down there. But I don't think you're advocating that, are you? I don't think you're advocating that Church Lane East or West would be a better alternative.
No, I'm not. In fact, if that was a suggestion, you'd have a rush of people coming through the door.
Saying that's a bad idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so look, we've got to live in the real world. HGVs are part of the real world. This is a route that the HGV drivers use. have you talked about an hours restriction for HGVs so that other HGV drivers outside of the council are not going to use the route then, or have you been told that that's unworkable because what if they do arrive at 8:45?
It'd be fair to say that there is a constant dialogue between the village and those companies and North Somerset. North Somerset Enforcement have been really helpful. It would be really wonderful if the world was such that the companies that operate those vehicles were considerate and thoughtful and kept to the speed limit and had their loads covered, etc., but that is not the reality. Mr. Young, if I may just say, you asked a question about objections. Just to inform your thinking, as I can see you're trying hard, and I appreciate that. Just in reference to the access point, we talked about the parked cars that are protecting that access point. What concerns residents, and you'll see from the video later, it's a blind access point. And we don't know how we're going to get over that, and that's why we think it's unworkable. And you'll hear from residents this morning with various issues going on in their lives, which means they can't even turn their head to actually check an access point, let alone children who you'll see, if you've been at the site at school, they scoot, they walk, they run. It's a challenge.
In terms of the access point, obviously we have to achieve a visibility, which has all been approved by the council. That's going to remove quite a number of locations where people park their cars, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, and that, I appreciate why that's a concern. Do people on Dart Lane have driveways?
But in fact, you'll notice on Dart Lane that certainly the lower part of Dart Lane, sort of like two-thirds down, the frontage is quite small, so there's not an awful lot of room for cars.
Yeah.
And then as you get further top, you do have a bit more room off the road, but there's not. It's an old road, so they don't have a lot of space.
I know, I understand.
And it's also worth saying that on the main road we have a number of flats. We have a row of Victorian residents is without any parking, and they park also on Dark Lane.
Okay, and I understand that's an issue. I do. Anybody who's got a car knows that these are issues. Have you applied to the council to make it a residents-only parking street?
Well, that has been mooted. I think one of the issues, I don't wish to be controversial, but we are dealing with, like many local authorities, who are strapped for cash. I mean, we're concerned that if the parking moves to the non-pavement side, which already has poor sight lines for drives, that will actually exacerbate that issue. Also, in the lower part of the road, where the lay-by is, if people park on the non-pavement side, then you have to come out through a driveway, out through the bay to turn left or right, and if there's a car parked opposite, you can't move. The Parish Council has historically asked for some work on that, and that has not been achieved.
Okay. All right. I mean, in terms of money, I'm not here to sort of solve the funding issues and so on, but obviously when you have a neighbourhood plan, as you do, you can have 25% of the SIL money. Does the council have SIL here?
There's a small bit of SIL, yes.
Yeah, so you will receive, obviously when houses are built, you should receive 25% of that with your adopted neighbourhood plan, should you not?
Providing that our neighbourhood plan is in date when that is done.
Yes, and is yours?
When it runs out at the end of 2026, we are keen to move on the next neighbourhood plan, but obviously we're waiting for North Somerset's plan.
Yeah, but
we are investigating things at the moment, like, for example, we have a community speed watch group which took 5 or 6 years to get the volunteers and then get the police training. And that is now in place. What we're finding, obviously, is a lot of speeding cars. The idea behind that is education. When we have enough evidence, we might look at having one of those smiley face signs, etc. But it's becoming obvious already that a community speed watch scheme is not going to mitigate for a scheme like this, because first of all, it's not operational all the time. It's dependent on volunteers, and in any walk of life, volunteers are difficult to get, let alone maintain, and they're not police officers.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But have you spoken to the council about how much SIL money you'll get? Because 25% of SIL can often be a substantial... I was in an inquiry last week, and the residents are going to get their share of £4.8 million for 300 houses, which is £1.2 million. And quite a few parish councils are getting a lot of money this way. Have you asked them how much money you will get as a consequence?
I believe a colleague has done a calculation, but...
Just broadly?
I don't know. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Because if you want...
I'm sure you do.
You know, there is a question about us providing the... there's obviously an issue about speed. There's an issue about the HGVs. You talked about the HGVs speeding. You talked about a lot of cars speeding. And it might be said, well, actually, rather than us do it, you should do it with the money that you're going to get from this development. I don't know what the precise amount is. I don't know the SIL regulations and the SIL sums here, or, you know, what your SIL covers or the extent of it. But there is an argument for saying we shouldn't be providing that. You should, because the speeding sounds like quite a priority for you, yes?
Well, hence the Community Speed Watch.
Yeah, and it's the number one priority for your community, isn't it, really, the speeding on Dart Lane?
It's one of them, yes.
One of them, yeah, okay. So if I characterise that as a key consideration, I'd be fair about saying that.
Yeah, I think I'd be fair. I mean, with the local plan, though, I would say that the situation, since it was drafted, it took about 2 years, and it came into fruition in 2014. The situation has significantly changed on our local roads. I'm sure you appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. You know, you were one of the pioneer authorities. You achieved a significant success, I would say, as that we talked about earlier, which is that you've, you know, got land in private ownership and you've created a local green space. Nobody can deny your success in that. One of the benefits of having a neighbourhood plan is obviously this ability to acquire significant funds, often millions of pounds. There's other development proposed in Backwell. I know about that as well. But I'm just thinking about the speed issue, and then also the council asking for further assessments and all the rest of it. I think you're going to be able to acquire some money, unless you're wrong about SIL, to put in further measures. But as far as the measures we've put in here, we've done a scheme. You said, well, it was nothing to do with the parish council. What was the parish council's proposal then for this road? What is its proposal for traffic calming?
We don't have a proposal because we can't see that we don't have a proposal because we don't see that access point is workable.
Yes, I know, but look, on a without prejudice basis, just assume that we win this appeal. The council aren't opposing it. It is a possibility. So if you put that to one side, that you don't want the access, you must have given this some thought if it's a concern. What proposals do you have for traffic calming?
Well, I'm not the expert, and I think that's why we've asked Lucy and Neil to come with us for the 106 conversations.
Have you drawn up anything?
No.
No. So you've got a neighbourhood plan, you drew that up, you've shown how as a community you can come together and draw up proposals and be very clear about that. Yet on this issue, which is a key issue, you've got no proposals for traffic calming. Why is that? What
we have done is we have had a dialogue through with North Somerset all the way through this process, explaining that the knock-on effects are not being addressed. And I think as lay people, that is the best we can do.
A dialogue about traffic calming?
A dialogue about the knock-on effects of this particular development with that access point.
Okay, and I understand that, and I made my point about that. So, you know, does this community want traffic calming to deal with the speeding lorries and lots of speeding cars? Does it want traffic calming, yes or no?
I think traffic calming is an interesting phrase. I mean, I don't know a lot about it before we started getting into this application. Something needs to happen to slow the cars down. And what we're concerned also about, another aspect will come out this morning in conversations, with those HGVs and the humps, for want of a better word, the cushions. Yeah. I mean, they don't always slow the HGVs down. We know that from Station Road, and they're incredibly noisy. So I think that's an additional loss of amenity to the parish, to the residents. In terms of thinking about access and knock-on effects, I'm just losing my thread. I'm losing my thread now. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I just want to deal with the cushions, okay? People call them speed humps or cushions, right? And you say, well, it won't slow them down, the HGV drivers. And obviously, if they've got like an empty skip or something, or some metal in the back of a lorry, then it can, you can make more noise. What is the solution then to slowing the lorries down if it isn't to put in speed cushions?
Okay, so what I said was not necessarily, because you may have some drivers that do slow down, but one of our parish councillors is a retired police inspector, and we've had quite a lot of information there about what does and what doesn't slow down on cushions. And we also have our own experience of cushions from Station Road, which for some drivers they are acceptable and for others they're not.
I do understand all that, but my point is, and I hate to sort of come so directly and in such a terse way to this, but what is it that you want?
Well, I think what I would like is the residents to have their say, and we have put money behind our experts coming here today, and they will be involved in the 106 conversations, and that seems to me much better than me as a lay expert and a volunteer answering that question.
Okay.
The other thing about mitigations, for example, double yellow lines, when we've had the conversations with North Somerset in recent months and previously, even if the parish council found the funds, we're not actually the highway authority. And if the highway authority doesn't agree with what you're requesting or the solution to a particular problem, even if you have the funds, you don't get it. I mean, I wasn't from the parish council then, but another parish councillor told me that we'd asked for some double yellow lines in this particular area a long, long time ago, and were knocked back. And recent experience would suggest that some of the things that we are saying we're concerned about are gaining traction. So it'd be really helpful to be part of that conversation later.
Okay, but look, we want a planning permission. We've consulted people. We put in the scheme that we had understood was preferred. We've discussed it with the highway authority who approved of the scheme, the local highway authority who approved of the scheme. And I just want to be fair, because I'm going to put this in closing submissions. So yes. Don't take this the wrong way, but it's sort of my job. I don't think the community really knows what it wants, does it? Because we've produced a more significant scheme, and we've had even more objection to it, which would suggest that the community really doesn't know what it wants.
If I may answer that question, if you've read the comments following Catherine's thing, people are saying they would welcome enhancement to the top end of Dark Lane. Once upon a time, it had a lollipop man. It doesn't have that anymore. It has become more unsafe as a consequence. The parish council has gone through enormous efforts to try and find a replacement, but it's not the kind of job that somebody wants anymore. So something does need to happen to that. I'm not an expert to tell you what. The Summerlands proposal that you have put forward, that there needs to be some way to safely cross towards the bottom end of Dark Lane. But the sight lines are so appalling. Again, I'm not an expert, but I don't see how that would work.
Okay. I just need to put this to you. Whether the parish council were involved or not, the traffic calming scheme that we've proposed and consulted upon was supplied to North Somerset Council by a ward member. And that is what we've taken forward. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that. And I think that ward member, well, she's here today, but the conversation happened with a couple of residents as a discussion point. I don't think that it was an understanding that it was going to go forward as a proposal, and that hadn't been discussed wider with the village.
Look, we can only do so much. And if the ward member puts something forward to North Somerset Council, I think we're probably entitled to think, well, that ward member was acting in the interests of the community and with the authority of the community. Are we not entitled to rely on that ward members speak for their community?
I understand what you're saying, but I have, and other members of the parish council, we've made that clear all the way through.
Okay. Why do you think it is that the highway authority think that this is a better and suitable and appropriate scheme? Why do you think they think that?
Look, it seems to be modern planning ways that local authorities are finding it difficult to go to appeal. And therefore, with answers to difficult questions, because initially, last September, I think it was, North Somerset Highways, their RSA1 said we're minded to to refuse, and then there wasn't an additional conversation with North Somerset and the appellant after that point, it seems to me that decisions are being made to, okay, this is an issue and it's really difficult, but we don't want to go to appeal, so let's just park that and we'll push it down the road. And it's happened with another scheme in Backwell, the land off Rodney Road. The same thing happened, and it's taken 3 years through Reserve Matters situation to agree on a highways proposal. And by North Somerset Highways' own admission, it's the best they can do as a significant compromise. Now, we know that's near an infant school, that's going to be an issue, and we've worked hard with everybody concerned to try and improve it. We don't want another situation like that.
Okay, but can I just explore this with you, please? The fact is that we were provided with that scheme by the ward member. We've sought to take, or have taken that forward. We have set that out. We've consulted people on it, and people have then complained. They don't want the speed cushions outside their house, but they've got to go outside somebody's house, haven't they?
Appreciate that. I think it was a shame that that was through a third party handed on out of context, without consultation, and also without the note beside it that these were ideas for a discussion point and didn't have any professional highways input.
Yeah, we can only do so much. We can only talk to and listen to ward members and the highway authority, and we've brought this forward. We've gone through the whole process of this. I haven't been given an alternative. I haven't seen an alternative. I haven't been provided with an alternative. Mr. Brandt is your highway consultant, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Has he set out an alternative scheme?
Well, I think Mr. Brandt will answer those questions when it's his
turn. Do
turn.
you know whether he's produced an alternative scheme as we speak?
I know that he agrees with us that it's a very unsafe access, and that the knock-on effects require addressing.
Yeah, it's a really specific question. Has he shown you or presented you with a different traffic calming proposal?
No, on the basis that we don't think it's workable, sir.
Okay, but if there's not one, then that's the position we find ourselves in. Overall, presumably, local people do want some form of traffic calming. Yes or no?
Well, you've read the comments, I think, is all I can say, rather than me speaking on behalf of everybody.
I am going to just slightly, I hope I've been polite, but just slightly push you on that. Do local residents want traffic calming, yes or no?
People want the speed reduced.
Okay, and you realise to reduce speed, you introduce traffic calming measures.
Not necessarily cushions.
Not necessarily cushions. Okay, so what?
Well, again, I'm not the expert, and I live in the area. I experience that road, and that's as much as I can say, really.
Okay, we can't limit everybody's car. We can't put a limiter on it when technology is getting more and more advanced. But we can't do that. So it's some kind of physical measure on the road, isn't it?
Well, every time you do a physical measure...
Is that right, though? It is some kind of physical measure on the road, isn't it? It has to be.
On the surface, I don't know. But I mean, off the top of my head, I don't have the answer to your questions. I know, for example, one thing I will raise is that I think it's written in some of the comments. The last hump would be opposite Summerlands in your Plan B. That's a partially obscured place for people to cross. Admittedly, it would be good for the elderly there and the children have somewhere to cross. But then you've got, I'm not quite sure how many metres, but you've got the race for the lights. And that's what will happen, is that people will come off that hump and they'll think, right, the lights are about to change, I can make it.
Right, okay.
That's a knock-on effect, as an example. But there are other knock-on effects I think are well documented in the responses.
So does that mean the hump should be somewhere else?
No, I just think that if you're going to look at a traffic calming measure as a result of development on Dark Lane, then you should look at all of Dark Lane, and you should look at, the knock-on effects, for example, at the top of Church Lane, where it also gets very congested at school time. There may be mitigation up there as well.
Okay, was that set out in the consultation responses in the area you've just talked about?
I think from what I've read on the comments from residents and from previous comments, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for answering.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Right, I have next on the list Mr. Neil Brandt. Can I just ask you, Mr. Brandt, were you intending to read out all these documents?
No, so I was proposing to read out the summary statement that Councillor Harland handed out this morning.
Sorry, I just have 3 copies of that. I have a feeling that this, your contribution and any questions might run on slightly. Is everyone happy to carry on, possibly beyond 11:30?
Can I suggest, obviously I need to read this material because it's new to me, so if we could hear the sort of evidence in chief, if you like, and then if I could have half an hour because I need to take instructions. It's helpful, but it isn't material I've had before.
Okay, then if you can make your contribution, then we'll take a break and then we'll move on to questions.
Thank you, sir. My name is Neil Brandt. I'm the owner and director of Neil Brandt Consulting, based in Frome in Somerset. I hold a Master of Science degree in Transportation Planning and Highway Engineering from Southampton University, and I'm a chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transportation for 28 years, with 38 years overall professional experience in highway and transportation input to development projects. Just to confirm, so I am happy to take questions. My professional experience includes considering the transport impacts of major developments, the design of infrastructure, and the integration of non-car travel solutions into development. I have presented expert witness evidence dealing with transportation at planning appeal inquiries, hearings, and local plan inquiries. In July 2024, I was appointed by Backwell Parish Council, an interested party to this appeal, to peer review the transport assessment and associated highway proposals relating to the outline application for development at Farley Fields West, the appeal site, and also advise on matters arising.
The stuff that I was provided with, I don't have what you're reading, or indeed any of it.
Sorry, could you just clarify?
Yeah, so I've been handed a whole series of statements, which I've just gone through to check the names, and this witness's statement isn't in that. So, I had a list.
Right, I think it's, I've been given 3 of them.
Ah, okay, that's probably it then.
I'm very sorry about that. Apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you mind if the witness started again, actually, if that's okay?
I think there's no need to read the. I mean, it's just running through qualifications. Do you need to hear that?
No. I don't know how far we got. Sorry, I was busy trying to find the document.
All right. If you just start at paragraph 1.4.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, if I go back to 1.4. So in July 2024, I was appointed by Backwell Parish Council an interested party to this appeal to peer review the transport assessment and associated highway proposals relating to the outline planning application for development at Farley Fields West and advise on matters arising. My statement deals with the traffic and transport issues relating to the appeals scheme. For the purposes of undertaking my peer review and providing this statement to the inquiry, I have familiarised myself with the site and the surroundings and reviewed such materials as necessary to enable me to form a judgment on the matters that I deal with at this inquiry. The statement I've prepared and provide to this inquiry is true and has been prepared and is given in accordance with the guidance of my professional institute, and I confirm that the opinions expressed are my true and professional opinions, irrespective of by whom I am instructed. I have previously provided technical advice to the Parish Council concerning the initial and then subsequently amended access proposals prior to the lodging of the appeal. That advice, provided as a technical note, was submitted by the Parish Council as part of their consultation dated the 30th of July 2024. Following amendments of the access proposals by the appellant, an updated technical note was prepared and submitted as a further consultation response by the Parish Council. In respect of this appeal, I have prepared and the Parish Council has submitted as an interested party my representations on access. I do not propose to use the inquiry time to repeat the content of those representations verbatim, but to update the inspector on my peer review of the changes made to the access and traffic calming scheme by the appellant and the proposed planning conditions relating to it. A single point of access is being proposed, that from Dark Lane. In order to create the access, it is proposed to demolish number 23 Dark Lane, which is only a short length of frontage onto the public highway. This limits the ability to achieve a technically compliant junction layout, specifically with regards to pedestrian and vehicular sightlines. The originally submitted access proposal was subject to a Stage 1 road safety audit, which identified several serious shortfalls with the proposed access. In order to bring traffic speeds on Dark Lane in line with the available visibility displays from the proposed site access, a traffic calming scheme was introduced by the appellant. The appellant has subsequently amended their access and traffic calming scheme on Dark Lane to address the serious shortfalls of the proposals, which failed to achieve adequate reductions in traffic speed. It replaces speed cushions with full-width humps and tables. I note from the statement of common ground that a new Stage 1 road safety audit has been undertaken for the amended scheme, and I feel that it is imperative that this is shared with the inquiry to establish the safety and feasibility of the amended access layout and traffic calming scheme. And I believe so that may have been shared this morning with the inquiry. In the absence of being able to have sight of the road safety audit, I have undertaken my own technical review of what I believe to be the latest access and traffic calming scheme, the apex drawing ending in TP014, dated the 6th of February 2025, as stated in the statement of common ground. Firstly, I note the drawing omits all vehicular and pedestrian sightlines. My own review has identified that pedestrian sightlines at 3 locations are substantially below the requirements set out in the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, CD 143, whereby it states, visibility display X distance from pedestrians at crossings and junctions shall be in accordance with the subsequent table E5.2, which, for your information, sir, is a minimum setback distance of 1.5 metres from the carriageway edge, and that the Y distance for pedestrians at junctions and crossings shall be provided in accordance with table E5.3. As we are dealing with a 20 mile per hour traffic calmed road, we apply the principles of Manual for Streets. That requires that the visibility display for pedestrians at all locations whereby they are directed to cross would be 1.5 metres by 25 metres. On the basis of my site observations and confirmed by the measurements of the appellant's latest access plan, the required pedestrian sightlines cannot be achieved within land in the appellant's control or that of the local highway authority. Specifically, they cannot be achieved for bullet 1, the proposed pedestrian crossing east of Summerlands and west of the site access, shown by the tactile paving on the appellant's drawing, in the north to south direction. This is a seriously inadequate sightline to the right. I have measured this as 6 metres achievable, appropriate for a sightline distance of an approaching car at 5 miles per hour and an HGV at just under 5 miles per hour. Both proposed pedestrian crossing points of the site access, shown by the tactile paving on the appellant's drawing, have sightlines in the direction of Dark Lane, equating to speeds of 5 miles per hour, whereas the requirement is for 20 miles per hour. It is not just a case of the ability of the pedestrian to see if it is safe to step out, but also for the approaching driver to see if there is a potential hazard ahead. It has been my observation that there is a clear pedestrian desire line from West Town Road to Dark Lane via Summerlands, making use of 2 pedestrian alleyways that reduce the journey time by cutting off the corner. This route is used by pupils and parents heading to and from Backwell Junior School to the south and Wesley Infant School to the north. Given the level of use of Dark Lane by school-aged children, even if accompanied by an adult, the ability of an approaching driver to see a child obscured by a wall or hedge is a serious matter that I would expect to be identified in a road safety audit. I would recommend to the inspector that during his site visit, he stands at the proposed crossing point on Dark Lane, 1.5 metres back from the curb edge, and crouch to a height of 1 metre, and determine whether he has sufficient visibility to safely step out and cross the road. I do not consider the issue of delivering pedestrian visibility for the 3 locations to be a matter of detail to be resolved at a later time through the Section 278 process. Fundamentally, the appellant appears to be unable to deliver a safe access and traffic calming scheme within either their or local authority land, and therefore the proposal is not feasible. Again, I iterate a need for the inquiry to have sight of the latest road safety audit. The alternative to deliver the scheme as drawn, with previously inadequate pedestrian sight lines and visibility, would in my professional opinion be contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 116, which I then quote with regards to development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios. The ability to redesign the traffic calming scheme again and relocate crossing points is constrained by residential driveways and pedestrian desire lines, and I believe there may be no alternative available. Regarding the proposed conditions, I have the following observations. Condition 8, I think this has been superseded, sir, in that I think we've learnt today that drawing 8 has now been superseded by drawing 14, and obviously the appellant can confirm that. With regards to condition 10, it is incorrect in so much as making reference to visibility displays that are not shown on the replacement drawing 14. And condition 37 is incorrect in so much as stipulating a requirement for average traffic speeds, whereas the technical requirement is for 85th percentile traffic speeds. It is respectfully suggested that the appeal should not be allowed on transport grounds, as I believe that the scheme would be contrary to the NPPF, as there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Thank you, sir.
Could I just ask whether you have had sight of the road safety audit?
No, we haven't. So we've had sight of the designer's log, which is an appendix to the audit, which sets out the actions that the design authority and the highway authority would take to address issues raised. We haven't had sight of the document itself.
Did you say you had that document?
I've got the response to it, and obviously we'll provide the original. So you know how these work. The design, there's a road safety audit, and then there's the designer's response to that. and my witness will provide, and the councillor can copy that. I've got the response, which deals with all the points, but obviously you need the original document as well.
Did you want to see the full document?
Ideally, sir, yes, I'd like to see the full documents. It's ordinary to do so that would be shared as a public document in support of a planning application.
Yeah, I want you to see it. That's, I suppose, my point, is I do want you to see it. I obviously have to try and keep up to date with everything that's happening and what's being provided. Can I suggest that we park this issue until this afternoon, make sure the gentleman has enough time to read it, and come back to his cross-examination after he's had enough time. I don't want to make him feel he's been bumped into answering questions. He needs to read it and have time to absorb it, and see the response. You'd appreciate the response. I was certainly only given it last night, and it's in response to the amended scheme, so the timing is in terms of a consequence of the timing of the consultation.
Okay, would you be happy with that arrangement?
Yes, sir. Ideally, I'd like to have sight of that so I can and obviously have due regard to it.
I would also like to see it, of course, and can do that at lunchtime.
In sense of the council, they're the best place to print this quickly, I think. So if we have a break shortly, it can be provided during the break.
Okay, rather than move on to the next contributor, which has the two videos, I think we should take a break now. And if the council could just arrange to have those things printed out. If you could send I've been sent the response log as well. If you could send the whole document to the case officer. Sorry, I've been sent a copy of the response log. You've sent the full document?
Yeah, it go to your case officer, obviously not to you. So it's been sent, the document's been sent to the PINS case officer, and when that officer gets a chance to see it, it'll be forwarded to you.
Yeah, can I just check when that was sent?
About 30 seconds ago.
Okay, then I'm assuming you don't need a half-hour break now. Okay, we'll have a 15-minute break. We'll adjourn until 11:40. Thank you. Right, time to resume now. And we'll start with Mrs. Rachel Bettison, who wants to show 2 videos.
Thank you. As a resident who lives in Backwell, I wanted to express my concern over the site access point on the proposed road to the new development and the safety impact this will have for people walking up and down Dark Lane, particularly young children who walk independently to the junior school. I am aware, as a driver, there are certain legal visibility splay regulations, overall being 50 metres. That's 25 metre view in each direction are required at junctions based on road speeds. The short video that a family member created last year demonstrates a limited visibility from the proposed site entrance into the development. It was taken from the proposed entrance to the site at 23 Dark Lane. Please can you play the video of the site access?
This is the property, and I'm standing 2.4 metres back from the road, and I haven't got 25 metres visibility down the road. If I go out 3, but if I walk out, that young man there is 25 metres away. I should be able to see him when I am back here, and I can't. So this access is impossible to use.
As you will see from this video, there is a real concern through lack of visibility that we are putting increased safety risk to both pedestrians and drivers. I believe this access is unworkable. Please can you play the second video at the site access school closure? The second video shows children coming past the same proposed site entrance in a busy, excited and distracted way that children do. I think this speaks for itself. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with you.
Mr. Young, did you want to ask any questions?
I mean, they're videos, obviously, so factual. I'll let my witness deal with the observations, but I can't cross-examine on a video, really.
Right, thank you. Now we have Mrs. Rachel Beckinsale.
Thank you, sir. I live at number 27 Dark Lane. I've lived on Dark Lane for nearly 11 years, and I'm making these comments from my own personal experiences of living in the area. I strongly object to the proposed development of Farley Fields West for various reasons, but most notably that of road safety. Dark Lane is a residential street which is moderately busy for much of the day and often becomes congested at school drop-off and pick-up times. There's a 20-mile limit, as we know, which is often ignored, and only one pavement. The users of Dark Lane are numerous and well documented, so I won't read my list, but I have written a short list for you to read in your own time. The proposed development on Farley Fields West of up to 125 houses would access Dark Lane at one of its narrowest points and cut across the only pavement, which is a busy walking route to the junior school, the church, and for walkers accessing popular public footpaths up Backwell Hill. With a narrow entrance and, as has been reported in Highways Agency submissions previously, insufficient sight lines, this new access road presents a danger to pedestrians just by being there. Both of my children have walked to school over the years in both directions, to the juniors and then the senior school. Many children, once they are old enough, walk independently, and the entrance at number 23 will cut straight through this safe route to school, curbing children's independence and adding a significant hazard. The proposed crossing point on the junction at number 23 appears insufficient to alleviate the potential hazards. It is not clear from the plans whether this crossing point will be a marked crossing point forcing the cars to stop, but in any case, at busy times of day, it's highly probable that traffic will be queuing to exit the junction from the new development onto Dark Lane, while at the same time it is likely, as is currently the case, that traffic will be queuing up Dark Lane beyond the junction. Children crossing the new road will have to potentially cross between queuing vehicles. And as the stream of pedestrians at this time of day is constant, I can imagine confusion and frustration occurring for drivers and pedestrians alike. I have a concern over the number of parked vehicles which will have to be displaced to create reasonable sight lines for traffic exiting the new junction. At present, for much of the day, there are cars parked towards the lower end of Dark Lane, which actually stretch up beyond where I live at number 27. At school drop-off and pick-up times, the parked cars stretch all the way up the road on the pavement side. This creates a safety barrier for the children walking on the pavement and helps to slow the traffic down at that time of day. The new road junction will push more parents to park potentially on Church Lane, which is also narrow and is exited onto Dark Lane on a blind bend. Congestion at this point is already an issue. The proposed traffic calming measures include speed bumps, and while I agree that something will need to be done to slow vehicles down if these plans go ahead, I am concerned that speed bumps on a road which is widely used by HGVs will create a considerable noise disturbance for residents. Backwell is not a NIMBY village. We implemented one of the first neighbourhood plans which had the support of 93% of the village. Our neighbourhood plan has delivered manageable and sustainable new builds, with over 100 new builds in recent years and another 150 houses on the way. With no talk of further improved infrastructure in the village, and with the obvious concerns to children's safety on Dark Lane, I do not feel this development should be allowed to go ahead. Thank you for listening.
I think it would be useful if, when we come to your witness this afternoon, if we could cover off questions about the nature of the crossing at the site access. But for now, do you have any questions for the...
My witness is making a note of all these points. I mean, just by way of example, the video, which I've only just seen, I can't respond to immediately, but I've been passed a note about the telegraph pole being removed and things like that. So we have to respond when we can, and obviously I'll call the witness to deal with all of these points, and hopefully that will be today, because I think it will help people who have given evidence today. Just with yourself, Mrs. Beckinsale, I think you'll just raise a hand, will you? Yeah, thank you. Just make sure I'm looking in the right direction. Look, this issue about the speed humps, we've tried to respond to the issue of the speed, and that is a normal and conventional way to do it, but you're then raising concerns about the noise that would be generated, something in the back of the lorry. What is the answer to that, please? If you want the speeds to reduce, but you don't want the noise that might be associated with that, what is the answer?
Well, the only answer that obviously I am not an expert.
No.
However, I personally feel, and I've seen it in other villages, not necessarily a permanent speed camera, but certainly speed camera signs, and then every now and then a van turns up, or they have a speed watch, and people get caught that way. And then that definitely, well, like I say, I'm not an expert, but I would imagine that if people feel there's a chance that they might get caught out, then it's a possibility.
Yeah, look, I'm no expert on speed cameras, but what I do know is that if you put a speed camera in place, you have to make a case for it in terms of there being a road safety issue, and the noise issue isn't a road safety issue. So, I don't see how you could justify a camera for dealing with a noise issue. Or is your case, don't want, and forgive me, my fault, is your point, we actually don't want speed humps, we want a camera instead?
From my personal perspective, I would be very concerned about speed humps. If you were, living on Dark Lane and you had HGVs coming past your house before 7 a.m, they are very noisy. That it's particularly these quarry trucks in the past 2 years, they've become a lot more prevalent, and they often travel up the road empty. And like you've said before, they have this big heavy metal in the back, and it's even without speed humps, they're noisy, and they're starting very early in the morning.
Okay, let me just make a note of that. Okay, so your preference then, no speed humps, is that right? Yeah. Camera instead to make sure they travel at the speed limit.
I think that would help, yeah. I still think that the crossing point is a danger. I don't think there's any way of mitigating for that.
Where is the current crossing point across the road, please?
So at the moment, crossing from the bottom of Dark Lane, you would cross at the traffic lights.
Yeah. But
so,
I mean, nearer the site entrance, where is the current crossing? Near the site entrance,
there is no formal crossing site.
No. So we're putting in a crossing where currently none exists.
But what is the proposed crossing?
The crossing is it's not traffic lights, so it's not that type of crossing. It's just to create a physical crossing point.
Will it have a zebra? Will it have stripy lines on it?
No,
So it's not an official crossing point then?
It is an official crossing point, but it isn't a zebra and it isn't a toucan.
So how do the cars know that they have to stop for the pedestrians?
It's more for the pedestrian. Well, they do have to stop for pedestrians. That's the law. But the pedestrians are given a point to cross the road.
I think probably these are questions that would be best to put to the appellant's witness later on. I mean, but just to remind interested parties, you can ask questions after the highways witness has given his evidence.
Further questions?
So with that in mind, if we just pick up that point later on about the crossings. Okay, now we have Katie Markkanen, if that's correct.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Dr. Katie Markkanen. I live on Dark Lane with my husband, my children and our house cats, and we moved from central Bristol in 2017. Thank you very much for this opportunity to give my perspective on the planning application for the demolition of 23 Dark Lane and the construction of 125 new properties in the field behind Dark Lane. Oh, thanks. I'm not reassured by the proposed traffic calming measures, and I'd like to offer some reasons why. My focus is the safety of the local children. As a junior doctor working in Bristol Children's Hospital, and then my years working as a GP, I am well aware of the dangers that traffic pose to children. Children are inherently more at risk of injury on the roads. Their small size, their lack of experience, their distractibility, and their reduced awareness of speed and acceleration make them vulnerable. Children walk the length of Dark Lane to get to school. Parents like me will coach their children, and when they're ready, we allow them to walk without us between the crossroads on the A370 to and from the school. I cannot see how parents will feel sufficiently secure to allow children this freedom if Dark Lane is broken by a junction on the only pavemented side, leaving no uninterrupted option for walking. More parents will be forced to drive their children to school for the lack of a safe walking route. The road is already congested with parked vehicles at busy times. Drivers accelerate hard to grab the brakes, the small brakes in traffic, and leapfrog up and down the road. More houses on the field will bring more traffic and the potential for queues at busy times. Dark Lane residents are familiar with the race for the lights at the bottom end. That's born out of the frustration with the congestion. There has been no effort to address this with the proposed plan. I worry how complex this will become with the addition of a T-junction, inviting more traffic on and off Dark Lane. And the idea of children needing to navigate this is horrifying. The imposition of a 20-mile-an-hour limit is a false reassurance. Our 20-mile-an-hour limit, when enforced, limits considerate drivers to under 25 miles an hour. On our narrow road, the cars move erratically and in a manner that can be hard for children to predict. Children hit at lower speeds, I am very grateful to say yes, are less likely to die, but a non-fatal accident carries a colossal burden, and that is a risk that I feel we cannot and should not dismiss. Children are not small adults. They need time and support to develop into responsible, autonomous people. Allowing children to walk to school requires a risk assessment, and it is not a decision that parents undertake lightly. We are encouraged to promote walking for numerous very valid reasons, but it is unrealistic and unreasonable to expect parents to make this choice if they cannot be assured that the school road is a safe road. I think it is irresponsible to put children in harm's way by proceeding with the demolition of number 23. I live on the west side of Dark Lane. My children walk to the end of our drive and are immediately on the road. They have learned that vehicles pass closely and at speed in both directions. Due to their reduced stature, they need to lean out a little to see round garden walls and plants, and I've watched my son and my daughter step out into the road to see round parked vehicles. The only existing pavement on Dark Lane is narrow, and children have not got the option to manoeuvre themselves for a better view of traffic. They are too small. They end up stepping into the road, and the addition of a new junction will only amplify the already evident hazards. My fears about the traffic on Dark Lane motivated me to volunteer for the Community Speed Watch group, and my recent experience confirms that drivers do exceed the 20-mile-an-hour limit. Even if we can slow them down with speed tables do nothing to improve pedestrian sightlines around this proposed junction and will only cause further problems for cyclists, amplifying the already present hazards. I do appreciate the dire need for housing in North Somerset and the onus of responsibility on our council to provide homes. However, I ask that you consider the damage this proposed development would do to an already established junior school, its children both present and future, and the residents on Dark Lane and the surrounding roads. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Doctor, can I just ask you, you say the imposition of a 20-mile-an-hour limit is a false reassurance. Is it then that you are opposed to the imposition of a 40-mile-an-hour limit?
40 or 20?
Sorry, 20. 20. Are you opposed to it?
I'm delighted by anything that might help to improve security on my road. So no, I'm very happy with the 20-mile-an-hour limit. I'm also quite keen to go out and paint some more 20-mile-an-hour signs on the road, and that's why I joined the Community Speed Watch group. It's just that I don't think you can say because the road has a 20-mile-an-hour limit that it's a safe road.
No, I understand. It's just, from my point of view, it's just sort of trying to understand what the community would like, and you've been clear there, so thank you very much for that. As far as the routes to school, it's crossing of one junction as part of the wider journey, do the children have to cross any other junctions?
Yes, they do. And of course, children will travel from all over the village. I think the bit of this is that this is the road that the school is on, and that currently the journey is up Dark Lane uninterrupted, and that will be broken. And therefore, very few children are going to be able to walk to school without having to navigate an additional junction.
Okay. Do they have to navigate any junctions at the moment if they, say, live on Dark Lane to get to the school?
Yeah, they cross the road at the top where there's a pinch point.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, of course, you know, it's a decision for each of us as parents, isn't it, about when and in what circumstances we might allow our children to walk to school. When they start primary school, of course, we walk them to school. You're talking here about what age group are you particularly concerned about? Because obviously very young children will go with their parents.
So the school at the top of the road is a junior school, so it starts from year 3? Year 3 to 6.
Yeah, and the 3-year-olds aren't going to walk to school on their own.
No, not 3-year-olds, year 3.
Oh, year 3,
plus.
sorry. Yeah, okay, so what we're talking about is children, I have to think backwards now.
7.
Yeah, 7. Mine are a bit older than that. So 7 years old, is that an age at which you would let your children walk to school on their own?
Some do. I didn't. It's a personal decision. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I think the impact, as I say, it's a risk assessment for every individual and every different child, and not all children are even allowed to walk to school.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's you've got to. I might trust my daughter a lot more than my son because she's more sensible. You judge each child on their own, but you know, that's a judgment for each parent. There's already junctions to cross, so we are introducing a new access into a housing development. The children who are unaccompanied will have to reach a judgment about whether it's safe to cross or not. Yes, that's the issue.
I'm not sure you can justify adding additional danger by saying danger is already present.
I don't think that was my question, so let's just try that again. Forgive me if I wasn't clear.
Sorry.
The children have got to make a judgment about whether to cross our access road, yes? If they're unaccompanied. And they will obviously need to look to see if there's any traffic coming, yes?
Yes.
What sort of speeds do you think the traffic on the access road will be doing as they approach the junction with Dark Lane?
Sorry, I really don't know. I don't know what that traffic road I don't know what that will look like. My hope is they'd be at 20 miles or less.
Yeah, because it's a junction, because you're coming up to a junction, I'm going to suggest to you they'd be travelling very slowly, and therefore we're dealing with a very low-speed environment, and then Dark Lane is to be made a 20-mile-an-hour zone, so we're talking very low speeds, aren't we?
Dark Lane is already supposedly a 20-mile-an-hour zone, and I suppose the point I was trying to make is that people don't adhere to that.
Yeah, absolutely, and our measures are trying to make it more obvious, to reinforce it, and to have more confirmation of that. You appreciate that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reinforce the 20-mile-an-hour zone, yes?
And I suppose the other thing I wanted to say is
so
that...
you agree we are trying to reinforce that, is that right?
Sorry, you've lost me. What am I agreeing to?
Do you recognise... It's my fault, forgive me. Do you recognise that we're trying to reinforce the 20-mile-an-hour zone?
No.
No, you don't. Okay, that's fine if you don't. Do you recognise it's a low-speed environment, the access road, as it comes up to the junction?
I recognise or acknowledge that it's supposed to be. How about that?
Well, I'm just trying to imagine who's going to be travelling at 40 miles an hour up to a junction on Dark Lane. I mean, they're not, are they?
Well, actually, I have witnessed that. And my kids and I have a game where we call it call the drivers who do it nutters. So it does happen.
But the difficulty
even
is
in
that, I'm really sorry, the difficulty is that junction hasn't been even built yet, so how can you have seen it?
Have you seen it?
No, it hasn't been built. So you said I've seen it, but it hasn't even been built, so how could you have seen it?
No, I've seen irresponsible driving in the current situation, and what I don't want is further complexity.
I understand that, but my point is really simple. This is a access way where the children have got to cross, and I'm acknowledging that. They've got to cross the road that is the access way. It hasn't been built yet, but the cars going to it are travelling at a low speed because they're coming to effectively a junction. So, the environment in which the children are crossing is a very low speed environment, isn't it?
So about half of the accidents involving children crossing roads are where they dart out between parked vehicles. That's a national traffic report thing that I found online. And even if cars are slow, children will still need to cross. And what we witness is cars moving in a jerky fashion that makes it very difficult for kids to know quite what they're doing. And so even if you're under 20 miles an hour, I really can't minimise or ignore the damage of a vehicle hitting a child.
I don't doubt that, but my point is different, which is on this access way. Do you imagine that our entrance way, so going into the development, is going to have parked cars at the junction? Do you think it's going to have parked cars on our access way?
I didn't think it would be big enough for that.
No, exactly. So we're thinking about the child crossing the road, and they're crossing, and you said...
I think this touches on the same point as previously, the question over the nature of the crossing at the access and how that's all going to work, which I'd hope would be clarified with the in the evidence this afternoon if we get that far.
Ability to cross the access way, I thought, because that's a new access, I think that's what's been complained about. There's a separate, obviously, there's a separate crossing point. But if you're happy for my witness to address these points, then I will obviously do that.
I think so, because there seems to be a bit of uncertainty over what the arrangement would actually be. So it'd be useful to explain it and how it would operate in relation to traffic at that point. So I think now we have a contribution that is going to be read out. It's from Sarah Goodwin.
Hello. Yes, I am going to read this on her behalf. Obviously, she's not here to answer any questions. My name is Sarah Goodwin. I'm sorry I'm unable to be with you in person. I'm unable to take time away from work. I am writing to you not just as a Backwell resident and parent, but also in my role as a paediatric intensive care consultant at Bristol Children's Hospital. I have always been concerned about traffic and danger to children around Backwell Junior School, with no safe crossings and single lane width roads, meaning vehicles mount the pavement and reverse frequently. The majority of children at the school walk each day, many of the older ones unsupervised, with their increasing independence. Clearly, any increase in housing in this part of the village will add to that problem, already made worse by the location of the recycling centre. It is not my children that will be affected by this, as my youngest will finish primary school next year. However, in my job, sadly, I have seen numerous children killed on their way to and from school. Nationally, 70 children die each year due to vehicle collisions, many of which are entirely preventable. Please take time to look at this link on the national child mortality rate, and the links provided below. The area around the junior school is an accident waiting to happen, and proposed new housing developments will only increase the risk. It feels like just a matter of time before a child is seriously injured or killed. I would implore the inspector to consider the devastating impact this danger has on families and the wider community when looking at developments on already overloaded roads. Thank you.
Can I ask, were you going to make a separate contribution?
No, I'm not. No.
So next on the list is Anna Littlewood.
Thank you. My name's Anna Littlewood and I'm a resident at 5 Dark Lane, so towards the bottom of the road. I am a mum to 2 children, aged 11 and 9, and both children attend the school. So I'm objecting to the planning application and related road safety measures for the following reasons. 1, the road safety proposals are inadequate and do not go far enough to mitigate concerns of parents in maintaining a safe route to school. 2, Dark Lane is not able to cope with the additional volume of traffic from a 125 home development where the only access is in and out of Dark Lane, and the loss of open green space and nature impact on the well-being of my children and the surrounding families. So each morning, both my children are able and trusted to leave our house and walk up to the school independently, and they have done so from the age of 7. So both children very keen to be independent, and we have done that risk assessment and judged that actually walking up a pavement all the way up to the top and crossing the quiet and safe crossing in front of the school was safe enough for them to do by themselves. They also do the same at the end of the day, even in the winter after dark at 4:30 p.m, on the occasion they attend clubs. Through this, they've learnt responsibility, time management, road safety, awareness of others, but most importantly, it has enforced a strong sense of self, as this has been one of the first activities they've been allowed to do on their own. I'm happy to let them do this as currently the route to school is safe enough. If the proposed junction is introduced in place of 23 Dark Lane, this will no longer be the case. My children would absolutely need to be accompanied to cross that road, particularly as the way the junction has been designed means there is a raised footway crossover, whatever that means, proposed right at the edge of the junction, exactly where the cars would need to hover if they're going to be able to successfully exit onto Dark Lane, given the appalling sightlines. A raised footway crossover doesn't sound like a crossing, but one of those confusing layouts designed to look friendly and accessible, but in fact are hugely confusing to pedestrians and cars alike. Who really has the right of way, and is that clear? There are multiple factors that make this crossing incredibly unsafe. Number 1, the fact that this is the only exit and entry point for an estate of 125 homes. Number 2, the fact that at peak hour, there will be a constant stream of children and parents needing to cross at the same time as cars are wanting to exit to go to work. Number 3, the fact that there isn't actually a formal crossing here, but a raised crossover point, leading to confusion over who has right of way, particularly for children. Now, I Googled what a raised crossover point was, and even Google couldn't help me. ChatGPT was a little bit more successful, but I think it would be nice to understand really what that is when we get onto it later. The inadequate sightlines for cars exiting onto a busy road will lead to cars needing to stop on the crossover point in order to be able to see when it is safe to exit, that very point where the children are supposed to be walking across that road. And then exacerbating this, the placement of a raised table pedestrian crossing, which is obviously a different type of crossing, immediately on Dark Lane where the cars are exiting to go right. So if you imagine the road, you've got the Dark Lane going up, and then you've got this new junction coming in. Most of the cars will be trying to turn right to go down to the A370. Immediately as they turn right, there's a proposed new crossing for the people who are wanting to come up through Summerlands. And so cars will have to be coming out, hovering on that raised crossover point while children are trying to cross, judging when they can get out of that crossing because of the poor sight lines, and then going across the road onto the other side to go down the road, only to immediately meet another crossing point where they'll have another constant stream of children coming across. Now, to me, as a parent, when I looked at those plans, I just thought, this is a nightmare. I'm not going to let my children walk up that road by themselves. Not only this, but cars so the cars trying to get out of that estate, the only way out, they will start to feel a pressure as the cars queue behind them, trying to come out and navigate this junction, and that will only lead to them chancing it and making erratic decisions as they exit that crossing. We've all been there on difficult crossings when it's risky and you feel that pressure of the build-up of cars behind you. You're like, oh, can I go, or I'm just going to go now, when it's not necessarily safe. And then my final point on this crossing is because the main traffic flow is down to the right to the A370, but that's the most difficult way to get out of that junction, more cars will say, oh, forget it, I'm going to turn left out of the junction and go up Dark Lane, taking them up past the junior school and down the narrow Church Lane side onto the 370 to be able to access Bristol, or indeed turning the other way, down Church Lane the other way. So you are effectively feeding more traffic up to the more difficult end of Dark Lane that is quiet, and actually over that crossing outside the school, which in the current proposals there is no mitigating measures around that crossing, showing how little the developers really understand what this route to school means and how their developers will really development will really impact it. So this proposal effectively destroys a safe route to school and removes one of the only sources of independence for these children. In this day and age, it is increasingly difficult to find opportunities to allow children to go off by themselves, to navigate, take responsibility and grow in independence. Think back to when you were a child. At what age did you first walk yourself around to your friend's house, or go and play in the park independently, or indeed walk yourself to school? Children today are losing these chances left, right and centre, and poorly thought through developments like this one continues to do this. We should be designing spaces that allow our children to thrive and grow in independence, not ones that stifle and limit. We shouldn't be changing their environment so that there is another reason to over-supervise them, to restrict them and to make them believe that they can't quite do something by themselves. As it stands, this proposal will mean hundreds of children in Backwell will not only lose the only safe route to the junior school, but also their ability to do this route by themselves. I implore you to reject this proposal on these grounds. Thank you.
Again, the same point as before. We need to look at the crossing and how it would work later on. But if you've got any other questions for now.
Just about the crossing. Is it that, so we don't need the crossing for our residents, actually. They don't need to because they can stay on the east side of the road. But the ward councillor raised it and asked for it. It sounds to me, from what you're saying, is you do not want a crossing point provided on this road.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying that the placement of that crossing exacerbates the difficulty of cars exiting that junction.
Okay. Where would you suggest is a better crossing point?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, now we have Mr. Graham Dixie.
My name is Graham Dixie. I have education and qualifications in horticulture and botany, and a lifetime in agriculture and habitat creation. What I'm concerned about is that the ecological reports present a selective narrative, and there appears to be a disconnect between what is written and what is done by the developers. And this is, in the village sense, undermining the trust in the developer. I'll give you some examples. The company ecologists appear to minimise the importance of the site for the greater and lesser horseshoe bats. They reference only a limited number of bats flying over the site in 2023, 24, but they do not mention their own survey showing considerable bat activity on the adjoining fields, particularly along the hedge at the southern edge of Farley Fields East, or the recent precipitous decline in the number of greater horseshoe bats at their nationally important summer maternal roost at Brockley Stables. To put some numbers on that, the numbers in there in the summer were reached a peak of 700. Now it's dropped down to between 180 to 190. Clearly, that population is under stress. Do they need more stress? But let's come to the most important point. If you look at the letters written by Natural England, by Alison Howard, she makes a very clear point about the importance of having cattle grazing on that field because their dung is critical for the foraging of the horseshoe bats. And yet, in August of 24, Persimmon kicked off the long-term grazier on that field, and so there has been no cattle grazing on that field for the last 6 or 7 months. And the question then comes up is, why didn't the ecologists mention it? And why? What is the gap? Is it a gap between what they say and what the developer actually does? Is this just a lack of communication, or is this some sort of plan in order to reduce the amount of foraging that is available for horseshoe bats, that they're going to reduce the population and therefore the problem? The next thing is the BNG calculation. This is the biodiversity net gain. Now, there are 2 ways you can do this. You can do off-site or you can do on-site. On-site is what Persimmon are planning to do here and they've done on the other side. The science shows that generally these don't work particularly well, but the reason why people choose them is probably this, that there is much, much better monitoring when it's off-site. So by doing it on-site, particularly in a location such as this, where the local council is under-resourced, there's going to be very little implementation. The second thing is that studies have shown that actually the calculations of BNG in 20% of cases is inaccurately calculated. And in this particular situation, they weren't calculating the fact that the cattle have been moved off that site. So I would say that there is not only is that there needs to be more accuracy in the ecological reporting, but I think those BNG calculations need to be redone in the light of the fact that the developer has kicked the grazier off, and we want to know why. The only other point that I want to make is one around, there is an important badger set there at the top of the field. It's been there for many, many years. It's very, very extensive. In their own report, they talk about keeping a 10-metre buffer zone, but in the annex, they suggest that actually there should be 30 metres. So why aren't they 30 metres? And will there be children playing too close to that? Is there ways that the design can protect those badgers from being affected by children playing, dogs walking? And finally, I'd just like to say one piece around soil. Soil is an important factor. It's crucial for wildflowers and so on and so forth, and yet no survey and no analysis of soil, of the phosphate levels in that soil. And the second thing is we are living in a much more febrile world. And if you'd been around in 2008 when the last food crisis happened, and you realized how quickly countries who are dependent on imports, including our own, quickly responded with the exports being cut off, we really need to think about food security in a much stronger way. And this site and 3 other sites in Backwell are all on grade 1 and grade 2 soil, and yet no analysis was carried out. I thank you.
Any questions?
No, so what I'm going to do is ask my ecologist who's here to deal with those points.
Right, if we have Angela Rippon-Miles now.
Hello, my name's Angela. I have lived in Backwell for just over 10 years with my family. I have 2 children who've been through the junior school and another child who will start at the junior school in September. We actually live on the other side of the A370, so I have many years of experience of walking up to the junior school via Dark Lane. At the moment, the walk to school for children at the junior school is in itself a life lesson. Parents tend to still accompany their children when they're in year 3, although not exclusively, to the school gates. But with each year, parents tend to allow their children to have a bit more independence and increasingly allow them to walk themselves further down Dark Lane and Church Lane to be met by parents or older siblings. This is ultimately leading to a child in year 6 being able to walk themselves all the way home independently, preparing them for secondary school and enabling them to feel that they have a certain amount of independence and confidence navigating themselves around the village and the world beyond Backwell. Having a blind sight entrance halfway down Dark Lane will make it much more difficult to allow children to have this sort of independence in the future. This is a photo of my son and his friends on their last day of year 5. It's in my statement. A few years ago when they were walking to be met at the crossroads at the end of Dark Lane by their parents. Kids being kids, they often walk, run and scoot in bunches. It sometimes feels as though there is an unwritten rule about getting to the traffic lights at the crossroads as fast as they can, and speed does not always lead to the most sensible choices where roads are concerned. 10-year-old boys are not always known for their road safety sense, especially when leaving school with their friends on the last day of term. But at this stage in their lives, they were able to walk safely down Dark Lane because it had no other roads opening onto it on the pavement side. And as a parent, I was confident in their safety. In my opinion, the road safety mitigation that's being proposed by the developer does not go anywhere far enough to mitigate the danger to the children and their families in crossing and navigating Dark Lane. Currently, our chosen route to the junior school from our house would include crossing the traffic lights on the A370 by the post office and then coming through the cut-throughs to exit onto Dark Lane at Summerlands. To cross Dark Lane from Summerlands, you have to lean into the road to see up Dark Lane before crossing. Often cars do travel quite fast up and down Dark Lane. However, in my experience at school pick-up, because of parked cars waiting to collect children, that traffic is hugely slowed down. If the ability to park on Dark Lane is removed by your proposed parking measures, this road will become incrementally faster and more dangerous for pedestrians to navigate. The stretch of Dark Lane which actually goes uphill is particularly dangerous for pedestrians and children on scooters and bikes or wheelchair users because it slopes quite significantly towards the road. As it currently stands, parked cars waiting to collect children from school provide pedestrians with a buffer of protection against the cars moving up and down the road, and at the end of the school day, some of these children and pedestrians are moving quite quickly down Dark Lane. Speed bumps will not help to protect children or pedestrians from traffic travelling up and down the road as well as these parked cars do. Speed bumps on Station Road, which is the only other road we have in the village with speed bumps on it, do not protect pedestrians from the traffic on the road. Many pedestrians that use Station Road, myself included, have stories to tell of being clipped by the wing mirrors of lorries or large trucks. Dark Lane is used on a very regular basis by large lorries accessing Coles Quarry, Cheston Combe and the Tip, although the Tip lorries tend to avoid this route during the school pick-up and drop-off times. Removing the ability to have parked cars along the pavement side of Dark Lane will exponentially increase the danger for any pedestrians, especially those accompanying young children and even the slightly older children who race down unaccompanied. If this development has to go ahead, there needs to be some sort of controlled crossing at the entrance to the site of the new houses to enable children to safely cross this new road and control the many cars that will enter and exit this new road. A new road into a new estate, which North Somerset Council traffic officers have deemed unsafe because it does not comply with the 25 metres required sightlines. The sightlines will be poor, children will be children. Adding a pedestrian crossing from Summerlands to the pavement side of Dark Lane may go some way to help increase safety, but this needs to be an explicit crossing, not just a raised bump where pedestrians and cars have to guess who has the right of way. Nor am I sure how a raised platform would work in front of the access road to Summerlands. Displaced parking will encourage people to park on the non-pavement side of Dark Lane, further reducing the sightlines for crossing at Summerlands and making this a more dangerous place to cross. I would argue that there also needs to be a proper crossing at the narrowed top of Dark Lane, where we had for many years a lollipop man at the start and the end of the school day to help the children cross the road. There also needs to be signage to say whose right of way it is. Currently, cars often turn out of Church Lane and go straight through the narrowed part, where the right of way should really be given to the cars travelling up Dark Lane. All of this is happening whilst children are trying to cross the road at that narrowed part of between the bollards. A proper crossing with lights and a right of way signage would also help those taxis and cars that use the lane at night to see the bollards when they are travelling at speed, not at 20 miles an hour. If this development goes ahead, we need this route to school to be just as safe as it currently is. We realise that developers are not obliged to improve current problems in areas that they wish to build, but it would be a suitable goodwill gesture towards the village if Charles Church or Persimmon were forced to mitigate the problems they will cause on Dark Lane and Church Lane and work to improve things further, especially after the disasters they have caused to residents along the A370 with their current works. Thank you for listening.
Any questions? Right, it's time now for a lunch break, which will run till 1:30, and we'll resume with interested party comments after that. Is there any? Does anyone have any issues with that?
Sorry, so I'm just wondering whether it would be convenient to let our team's residents speak now, because I think they're ready. Are they ready? Yes, and she has complex needs, so I think that would be really helpful if you'd all be agreeable.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. So we were going to hear from Ms. Roberts and Mr. McKeon. Right, it's time now for a lunch break. We'll run till 1:30, and we'll resume with interested party comments after that. Issues with that?
So I'm just wondering whether it would be convenient to let our team's residents. It looks like that might be inconvenient for a moment. Hang on, I think is he tuning in?
Yes,
Paul, can you hear us, please?
So I think that would be really helpful if you'd be all.
Yeah, we should do that then.
I think we're going to have to adjourn if that's okay.
They're listening to the YouTube feed, which is delayed.
Okay, I think it looks like it's completely out of sync.
Ms. Roberts and Mr. McKeon.
Okay, then we'll take a lunch break and try and pick it up again afterwards. If you could try to get it in sync, that would be helpful.
Until 1:30, and we'll resume with interested party comments after that.
So we'll adjourn now until 1:30.
So I'm just wondering whether it would be convenient to have some Teams resident. It looks like that might be inconvenient at the moment. Hang on, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear this. I think that'd be really helpful.
So